first speaker this morning is our U.S. Representative Blaine Luetkemyer. We're delighted to have him with us today. And turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Doc. Good to be with you this morning. Someone must be a doctor. I can't read your notes up here. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank all of you for coming out, and thank you for what you do. It's always interesting to talk to a group of common folks who are business people, who are community activists, because you have a different view sometimes of what, especially when you get in Washington, especially what government looks like. In Washington right now, we have a mess, and you're the ones who are having to deal with it. I mean, I'm in the middle of it every day, but at the end of the day, you have to deal with the results of what goes on. And so this morning, I just kind of like to frame for you some of the things that we're doing, and kind of give you a perspective on it for a few minutes, if I will. We've got a situation with the budget and the deficit that's basically out of control. And we have two different philosophies in Washington on how we need to approach that. One group believes that we can keep taxing and spending our way to prosperity if you just keep taxing and spending more. And that government is the solution. The other side believes that government is not the solution, that you are the solution. That you are the reason we are where we are today as a country in 230 plus years, the greatest country in the history of the world, and as a result of all of the activities and the freedom and entrepreneurial spirit of our people, we have risen to this point, and we believe that if we continue to keep the throes of regulations off your back and reduce the tax rates, you, the individual people, especially the people in this room, are the ones that can drive our economy and make it a better place, and continue to grow it and make it a better place for our kids and grandkids. So I think that this is the heart of the discussion we're getting to every day. And people want to know why we can't get along. It's like, well, there's two different groups here, two different sets of principles. And it's hard to find common ground when the principles are 180 degrees apart. And so as a result, you wind up with the discussions that we have, where we fight each other and try and find some common ground, but there's not enough ground in the middle to really have any common ground, so you wind up having to have, this side has to have more votes than what this side does, because there's not enough room in the middle to find compromise. So it makes it very difficult to see the result of it. So where we're at right now with the budget negotiation, it's really a series of events that's taken place. It's the fiscal cliff, the debt limit, sequestration. Then we have, last week we passed the budget extension. Shortly in April 15th, we have our own budget that's due in the House. The Senate actually has a budget that's been due for 4 years. And finally, hopefully now they're going to not recognize them and pass one. Then in the middle of May 19th, the discussion should start, or I think that's when the next deadline runs out, although I think they'll probably be a little bit later than that. So there's a series of things that are going to happen here, and what we've done is try and sequence these things. Some of the stuff that we've done over the last several months, a lot of people kind of question what's going on, they scratch your head as to why we did this or we did that. But actually what it is a reason to sequence everything, so at the end of the day, we can get to the debt limit deal in May and have the maximum ability to negotiate some sort of long-term plan to try and get this deficit in our budget under control. Our goal is to get to a balanced budget within 10 years. Imagine that. Here in the state of Missouri, I see some of our representatives here this morning. Senator Kehoe and I see other representatives here. I saw Rocky Duffy's right here. David's here. They have to balance the budget here in Jeff City. Why should we do it in Washington? Yet we tried to pass a balanced budget a year or so ago and went down to defeat 5 or 6 votes. So it's a little frustrating to see that they have an attitude that we can just keep borrowing and spending more money and yet not be accountable for it, I think. And I think that that's going to stop. So what we're trying to do with all of these events is try and find a way to sequence them and get to that point. This report basically locked up the revenue side. To me, I voted for the bill. A lot of people don't like that vote, but it's a chance to actually lock up $400 billion of your money on a permanent basis, instead of having that money be spent, which is a huge problem for me personally. It makes it permanent. It adds certainty to the tax code from the standpoint of you as small business people can now actually go out and say, this is what the tax code's going to be for the next years, as long as we retain the house, because it'll not going to raise more taxes. And it's also a buffer for what's coming out, which is over $200 billion worth of tax increases at the end of the year, as well as the sequestration cuts. So you're looking at about $350 billion worth of money that's being sucked out of the economy, which is going to cause a downturn in the economy. It's going to slow the economy. There's no doubt about that. Depends on how much it's slowed, depending on other things that are involved, like interest rates and what have you. But I think that, you know, if we would have not done this, not taken the steps that we did to make those tax cuts permanent, I think you would have seen, not even a recession, but a major depression. You're looking at $750 billion sucked out of the economy. We can't handle that as an economy. So I think that was the first step. Second step was to take the sequestration to the end of the road so we can maximize the leverage. Sequestration was to make the cuts to the discretionary side. And if you realize what's going on with the defense budget here, the sequestration is mandatory cuts, 1.2 trillion over 10 years, about 120 trillion a year, 120 billion a year, on an annualized basis. And in those cuts, half of the cuts are being sustained by the national security side of the equation. And they make up less than 20% of the budget, yet they're going to sustain 50% of the cuts. So they got some major problems coming. And I talked to Paul Ryan about this. I said, Paul, we can't handle this. What are your plans for trying to mitigate this? And he said, well, the first go around here, and this is what we did with the budget extension bill, was to put into the bill, which is the extension from April 1 to September 30, the two appropriations bills that we had approved on defense and military construction of the VA last fall, that gives the military the discretion and the flexibility to actually go in and make the changes to their budgets necessary to give them flexibility to operate. I'll give you an example. There was $500 million left in the Iraq war. They couldn't touch it without this flexibility we were going to give them. So it's very necessary to go in and give them flexibility to be able to move their funds around to be able to address their concerns. We didn't get that flexibility the rest of the budget for political concerns, but we did to defense. And he said, what we're going to do is, after this, the new budgets we propose, we're going to try and lower that amount down to 300 and find cuts other places in the budget to make up the difference. So the $500 billion the defense is going to take over the next 10 years, let's make it 300. And so we're going to try and do this, and it's very important from the standpoint of what's going to happen in Missouri. Missouri has got 2 military bases, and if this $500 billion goes through with sequestration, we're going to have 2 rounds of BRAC closings. You remember the BRAC closings, don't you? Those are the base closings. There's a whole list of bases that are listed that are going to be closed. It's on one list, and you either vote them up or vote them down. You can't take anybody off, you can't put anybody on. It's an independent panel that puts the list together. End of the day, it's winner take all or loser lose all. And we've got 2 bases in Missouri, and I'm very concerned that we're going to lose 1. So as a result, this is extremely important that we make sure we minimize the cuts to the defense portion of the budget. From here, what we did also with the debt limit bill was to actually force the Senate to put a budget together, which for the first time in 4 years, come April 15th, they will now have to have a budget. We'll have a budget by then. Ryan's budget, I think, will come out this week. We'll pass it probably next week. And when you do, I think you'll see the difference in the philosophies of how we govern. And then we'll spend the rest of the summer arguing about how we're going to mitigate these, how we're going to put these together, how we're going to put them, where we're going to find the cuts, where we're going to find the dollars to make this all work, and how we're going to wind down some of the spending to get us to a 10-year window when we can finally get a balance. And that's the trick. The second part of all of this that's going to happen is the tax reform. And that's going to be what we hope to get done with the debt limit bill come May. By then, hopefully, we'll be able to see a path where we need to get to. And with the debt limit situation, we want to try and do tax reform. And tax reform will come in the form of closing loopholes and use those dollars to lower the rates. If we lower the rates for everybody, including businesses, we can grow the economy. And there's two things that have to happen here. We've got to slow our debt, the rate of growth down of our government, and we have to raise the growth of our economy. And the two eventually will meet, and that's how we're going to get out of this mess. That's our plan. I don't know if it's going to work. It takes two to dance. Right now, we don't have a dance partner. We've got some opposition in the Senate. The White House, they don't like to do that. They never present a plan that never balanced it in 50. So they keep wanting to spend more, tax more. They think that's the way to go. They have a Fed chairman who thinks that they can keep printing money and all work out later on down the road. It's very concerning to me. I sit on the Financial Service Committee in the House, and we had Bernanke in front of us, I guess, week before last. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Chairman, do you have a plan to get us out of this, to wind this down? Because we're headed down the road, the same road with China and Japan. I don't know if you realize that China's already at 200% debt to GDP as well as China, or Japan. I said, these guys are in trouble. Do you have a plan? Because we're headed down that same road. We're a mirror image of Japan on about 10-year plan. And I said, yeah, we have a plan. I said, has that plan ever been utilized before? Has it ever been tested? Has anybody ever done it? The answer is no. So their plan is untested, and we've got some real difficulties to try and unwind this thing and keep inflation from eating us alive and put the us into recession. So when people listen to me, they say, Blaine, you're depressing as hell to listen to. And so it's not a lot of good news I got this morning, but I think that you can see the economy is resilient. The economy's actually grown just a little bit over the last year, not much, a little bit, so negative like your biz. We also got some, looks like we've got some growth in the housing sector, which is good. I'm concerned about it because we've got the FHA is actually kind of propping up the market right now. Now they've done what Freddie and Fannie have done, and they're underwater, but hopefully we can rectify that shortly. But I think, end of the day, I think it points well to what we have here as a group of citizens that can make this all work. We have the best group of citizens in the world when it comes to the heart of the work ethic and to technological advantages that we have, as well as the entrepreneurial spirit of our people. And I think that's the secret to what we as a country are going to be able to do and how we're going to find our way out of this mess. Let me address one more question real quickly this morning, and I'll turn it over to somebody else here. I know I have a lot of questions. In fact, the number one question I get in the office now is with regard to Second Amendment rights. Gun control is a really big issue. I think, let me just phrase it like this. Senator Feinstein in California, who chairs the committee in the Senate that handles the gun control legislation, has a bill, and she can't get her own bill, her own committee, and that's her statement. So if she can't get her bill, her own committee, it's not going to do it. And same thing for the House. I think that you'll find that there's very little gun control legislation that's going to make it through anywhere. I don't think anything will get through. I think the president, quite frankly, is the way for him to sort of pander to the left. He's getting attacked significantly from the environmentalists on the left for some things he's not been doing. He's got some folks on the other side of him that are concerned with the way he's going with fiscal stuff, because behind the scenes he's actually talking to us about how to make some cuts. He's also behind the scenes talking about maybe doing something with the Keystone Pipeline. So if we can do the Keystone Pipeline, I think we're going to see some revenues come in. I think we'll see some growth. We can become more energy self-sufficient. It's a really big key. And the State Department the other day came out with a report that indicated that it's not going to be an environmental problem anymore. So the result is taking a lot of issues off the table that were concerning him that he used as an excuse to not support extending the pipeline. And so because of that, I think it was a good shot. Now, it depends on how the environmentalists took his coattails, but I think that he really doesn't have any good reasons not to support it anymore. And he knows it, and I think that this is the gun control issue is a way that he can sort of appease those folks. You have to understand all of the issues in Washington. I know they're this way in Jeff City, but they're even about 10 times more political than they are the realistic issue that you have that you're working on. Everything is political there. You know, the president has gone out of his way to make things political. You know, whenever we have the cuts to sequestrations last week, and the first thing he does to try to sort of mitigate that is to cut out the White House tours. It's like, you got to be kidding me. He takes a $900,000 golf trip 2 weeks before, now he's worried about White House tours. You know, that's not his house to begin with. That's your house. That's your house. There's no reason for him to keep you from being in your house. Yet, that's what he's trying to do. We got a hold of a memo this week from USDA, between those inter-office memos, that they were telling their people to make sure that the cuts were as visible and painful as possible. That's not leadership. That's how you divide and conquer. A real leader unites people. A real leader unites the country behind a common goal. And the common goal is to put this country and our people going forward into a way that we as a nation can lead not only ourselves, but the world. The rest of the world is waiting on us. Trust me, they're waiting on us. I meet with people from all over the world all the time, and they're waiting on us to lead ourselves out of this economic mess that we're in so we can pull them up, because they don't have an economy anymore that can actually do that. Europeans will look at you right now and tell you that. I've had a bit of it. They are waiting on us to pick ourselves up to lead them out of their mess. So if we're going to do this, we're going to have to get together. And we're going to have to find a way to pull this train in the same direction. That means you have to unite each other. You have to pull everybody together. You have to compromise a little bit over here, and compromise a little bit over there. In the day, you've got to realize that there's a bigger goal than what your parties are all about. It's a bigger goal than what the conservatives and liberals are all about. There's a bigger goal in all of this, and that is to have a better future for these kids right here. And by the way, congratulations. That's fantastic. You guys deserve a nice hand for all that you've done. Thank you. They didn't accomplish that by dividing each other up. They did that by working together as a group, as a team. And that's what we have to do ourselves. We can take an example from the young people. We can do it in Washington. We can get something done. You guys want to come with me? I need some help. But thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for hanging in there. I know the reporter while you were asking me why I'm here this morning, I said, you guys need to have a different perspective. You need to hear the views, at least my point of view of what's going on in Washington. So if you can make some better decisions, understand what's going on, the thought process behind what you see on TV the other day, and the inside baseball stuff on here, what actually is going on behind the scenes. We believe that we've got an idea, we've got a plan to try and get us out of this mess. We believe it can work. We're trying to find some partners in this to make it work, and with your help, we're going to continue to fight for you and make it work down the road. I'll stick around for a while after this and be glad to answer some questions. But in the meantime, thank you again for the opportunity to be with you. And John, we serve you. I look forward to continuing working with you. Take care.
Our next speaker will be Mr. Mike Kehoe. As he's making his way up, just a couple of quick shout-outs. Our catering today was by Maple Street Buffet here in Eldon, and our Eldon McDonald's provided the drink. Good morning. Thank you for having us here this morning. Blaine, I would contradict what you said. You said I don't have a lot of good news for you. But I will tell you guys that I travel our 7 counties, and I hear people all the time say, what are we going to do in D.C.? And my answer, once you tell them, is you got to let common sense people who understand agriculture and small business and understand rural Missouri to represent us. And that's what we have in Luetkemyer, so that's the good news. You'll find more people like them, and together they'll push the right agenda forward. I just thought I'd spend a few minutes this morning with you about what's happening in your state capital, and I know Rocky and David are here as well. The House and Senate are off to a productive start, I would tell you, this year versus probably the last couple of years, in that we have an agenda that we're both trying to work forward together on, instead of the House kind of working against the Senate and the Senate working against each other and the House working against each other. I believe that there's an agenda that's good for Missourians that we're trying to move forward, and that agenda is many of the items that I've talked about for the last several years, which really gets down to job creation. You know, I'm a firm believer that if you're going to move the economy forward, and certainly Eldon specifically and Miller County has had its shares of economic woes, we're going to have to start moving in the direction that that creates opportunities for people to go back to work. And those, in my world, are infrastructure opportunities. And we have a couple of bills that we're working on. One is electrical utility infrastructure. You've heard probably a lot of conversation about that. It's a very controversial issue because some people think it's just giving utilities some kind of blank check to go do what they want to do. I think it's a policy issue for us to make sure we watch those utilities, but give them the opportunity to expand and rebuild what is a very aging infrastructure across our state. It's infrastructure that at some point in time will have to be replaced. And my philosophy is it's easier and more affordable to the ratepayers if we replace as needed instead of waiting for that infrastructure to break down or to really cause a catastrophic outage that would affect many of our businesses and homes. So that's a piece of legislation we're talking about moving forward. That is also the footing, if you will, the very beginning stages of what we need to continue our discussion we've had for the last couple of years with additional nuclear capacity in Callaway County. Small modular reactor, I'm sure many of you have heard. That term is the mini nukes, small nukes that are going to go potentially in Callaway County. And the ISRIS bill, the infrastructure bill I was talking about, I tell everybody, if you remodeled your kitchen, if your spouse is like mine, you have to have a new refrigerator for some reason when you're remodeling your kitchen. I don't understand that. But you have this nice, shiny new refrigerator going in, but what you don't have is the right stuff behind the wall to support it. So the water line for the ice maker, the electric line for the refrigerator is an old, cloth wrap line, or is a new proper line in the outlet box, and is it grounded, is it in right? That stuff behind the wall is what we're talking about when we talk about utility infrastructure, and our shiny new refrigerator could potentially use a small modular reactor. So that's how those two kind of go hand in glove. Westinghouse, who is the technology partner in that effort, has said that this type of regulatory environment, this type of legislation is what they need as one of their considering factors to move forward here in the state. So we think in the big picture that's a very important issue. And obviously, rebuilding infrastructure creates many jobs and opportunities for additional business growth with reliable, low-cost energy in our state. The other infrastructure issue that we're talking about, as many of you know, I'm kind of a roads and bridges, a highway geek, if you will. I was on the Highway Commission for 5 years before I was in the legislature, and got to understand Missouri's transportation system very well. Missouri's transportation system had a nice boost of funding when you all voted for Amendment 3 back in 2004. But by design, that funding was meant to last 4.5, maybe 5 years. We actually stretched that out just a little bit because we had, in February 2009, there was the ERA money, which was the stimulus money that actually came to the states. And the very first project, as many of you remember, that happened in the United States was the Luetkemyer Bridge. It was the very first contract that was signed minutes, maybe seconds, after that bill went into effect. So whether you agree with stimulus or not, the money from stimulus actually kept the highway funding going just a little bit longer. But we eventually got to that point that we've been talking about where the funding has dropped off the charts as far as what we need to continue infrastructure improvements in the state. MoDOT is not a branch of government that says, well, we want more, we want more, we want to grow. They had a $1.4 billion construction budget during Amendment 3, and that's now about $700 million. Now, by the way, that really would have been $600 million, but MoDOT underwent a painful right-sizing its organization to save about $100 million a year, and that $100 million is going to the roads. It's going to your roads and bridges. So that gave them about a $700 million year budget, but it's still half of what it was when they were able to really get out and expand corridors, make safety improvements across our state. So we have a proposal out there that would be a limited time investment in transportation infrastructure, and that would be a 10-year 1-cent sales tax. It would not be on food and prescription drugs, so it currently would affect whatever the state sales tax does now, so it wouldn't overreach any of those definitions. And we believe that will raise about $7.8 billion in that 10-year time period. 10% of the money would go to cities and counties all across the state. That would be about $80 million a year for cities and counties. Miller County would obviously get its share out of that. So we think that that would be a great proposal to help counties, because the money the counties would get would have to be transportation-related projects, but they could decide what they wanted to prioritize that money with. And then the state obviously would be able to have the funds it needs through a planning partner process where citizens decide on the projects that they want to have built across the state. And you'd be able to move Missouri forward for a 10-year period of real economic growth and building projects that are sorely needed, not just doing it to do it. At the end of the day, the state of Missouri owns that asset. So we spend money, we create something that's better, and then you, the citizens, own that asset. And I think that's very important to point out. If we get this proposal through the legislature, then you will decide. That's all our bill does, is it lets you decide if you think the investment in a defined list of projects, which will come out before it goes to the vote, if you decide that you think that that's worthwhile to happen, you'll be able to vote on that. And that one should come around in November of 2014. Now, I get a lot of people who ask me, why don't we define the projects while it's in the legislature? And I say, no way. You don't want a bunch of crazy people at the Capitol deciding what highway projects you get. You want the citizens to decide that. And the process would allow for that process to take place, which would be good. So the legislative House and Senate will be looking at that as a joint resolution that would move that out of the House and Senate, and it would go then before the voters. But between the time it comes out of the Capitol, which would be May of this year potentially, and the time it goes to the vote, which would be November 14, and that 15-month period, you would see a conversation and a list of projects developed, and then you can decide if you think that investment is worthwhile. It creates about 270,000 jobs in that 10-year period, so it's a massive economic effect on our state. The dollars have $4 to $5 time ripple effect, so when you hear $7.8 billion multiplied by 4, that's the impact that economic activity would have in the state of Missouri. I think that's a good resource for what citizens want government to do. They want us to build stuff for them so their families are safe, so they can get their goods to their factories, so that they can enjoy what the state of Missouri has to offer. So that will be 2 of the infrastructure projects we'll be working on this year. Like Blaine said, I'll be around if you guys have any questions. It's an honor to represent the citizens of the entire 6th Census District. It's something that I enjoy doing, and as the reporter was asking me questions, I didn't have the cool stuff to tell her like Blaine did, unfortunately. Our life's a little boring compared to what we do in D.C. The best part about it is this, right here. And anybody who's elected here will tell you, Rocky, David, Blaine, any of your representatives or senators will tell you, the best part about it is just getting out and meeting with people, make sure you stay connected and find out what's happening in your community so we can stay in tune and do the best we can to represent you. I appreciate you having me here this morning. It's always great to be down in Miller County. I too will be over at the school later on today for Democracy Day, so I'm sure we'll see many of you there. Congratulations to FFA, despite Mr. Bill still being your instructor. I can't believe he's figured out a way to get you through again. But thanks, man. We appreciate you having me here this morning. Thank you.
Our next speaker is one of our 2 new state representatives, Representative David Wood.
Good morning, and I also want to say thank you for having us here this morning. When Larry told me I had 15 minutes, I figured I better write a speech so it's on a business card. It's not going to take very long. I want to echo the thought, though, that working with Blaine and Mike and Rocky is a privilege. We are very well represented in this county, and my district, we kind of cross lines with Miller County now because we have Miller County divided into 4 areas. I have Eldon, Rocky has a good portion of south of here. We have Mike Bernskader and Tom Hurst. All 4 of us, I believe, are really working for what your interests are, and we have the 35,000 people that we represent is the #1 goal for us. I would also like to thank the Eldon School District and their athletic department, their FFA department, because I room right next door to an Osage graduate who it's kind of rough sometimes, but when Eldon beats Osage in football, and Eldon beats Osage in basketball, and Eldon's FFA is so highly ranked, it really gives me ammo. Thank you very much. bad news is Rocky talks after I do. So, I want to start out just real quick with the committees that I'm on this year. I have the privilege to serve on the Appropriations Committee for Healthcare and on the Healthcare Policy Committee, Tourism, DNR, and Conservation Committee. Rocky and I share that honor. And I have accounts and administration. So the majority of my time to start out my freshman year has been learning Medicaid expansion and insurance exchanges. That is a big, long, and very complicated topic I'm not going to try and cover with you today. I will say that the House and Senate are fairly well committed not to do the Medicaid expansion for this year. I think that is the right move. I hope that we will take the summer in an interim committee and really discuss and line out a plan that's going to be right for Missouri and not push down from the federal level. I think there are adjustments that need to be made and some coverages that can change, but we need to be a little bit wiser with our money, and just throwing money at a bad situation isn't always a good thing. One of the things that I campaigned on very heavily was technology and pushing the internet to our rural communities, and I want to recognize Kehoe Electric for being here today. We've got the person in charge of that broadband initiative and the president here, and if we could give them a round of applause, because they are pushing broadband probably better than any other entity in the state of Missouri. To that end, I met with them. I've talked with Missouri Broadband Now, which is the organization that's supposed to be coordinating the push of broadband to the rural communities. We're trying to make things move in the right direction. And Kehoe's promised me, I'm going to tell them my promise here, that I will have the most connected rural district in the state of Missouri by the end of the 4 years in their broadband initiative. And even though they don't have a great deal of Kehoe customers in the Eldon area, they have agreed to at least discuss the possibility of pushing the broadband here as well. So that's good news for you. One of the things that we do as representatives is we listen to our constituents and try to do the best we can in meeting your needs. And one of the things that come up very early on in the administrator, the term here, was I was contacted by the Eldon community, and there was a great concern with the K2, K3, spice, the marijuana, synthetic marijuana that's being sold. It's very hard to keep track of. We had a bill passed in 2010 that kept the chemical compounds and made them illegal, but the industry changed those chemical compounds to where they're not on the list, and it's very difficult to prosecute. So we met with the mayor and with the couple of council people and the chief of police, and we discussed what needed to be done. And then I went to the bill sponsor. Actually, he's now the representative that was very instrumental in passing that bill for the K2. And he was very willing to look at adjustments with it. So we come back, we met with the prosecutors here from both the county and the city, and they had their suggestions and taking an approach that not only attacked the chemicals, but would look at a retail attack on stopping it. So I went back and I called and talked to the representative from the Attorney General's office. I had a representative from Public Safety and the head of the crime lab from the Highway Patrol, along with the other representative, come into the office. We did a little brainstorming as to what we could possibly do. And the head of the crime lab had a current chemical list, which has now been given to Representative Rhodes, and he's got the bill that's written up and will be introduced, I'm hoping this week, that will update the chemical list and make it a little easier to prosecute. And then I've got a bill that I'm going to pick up this afternoon, get some signatures on, and get it turned in as soon as possible. That's going to attack the retail side of it. Put some restrictions on it where they have to label it in certain ways so they know the side effects. And if they don't put the side effects on it, then there's going to be consequences. Now, once these bills are introduced, doesn't mean they're going to be law by any means, and there's going to be lots of changes. That's the process. And hopefully the lawyers that are smarter than I am can make it hold water a little bit better. But I just want to let you know that we are working for you. And if you have issues and problems that are in the community, bring them to us. we'll try our best to get them solved in whatever way that we possibly can. It is very good to work with the people that I work with, and you know the people that you can trust. But we also want to keep mindful and stay in touch with you. So, Larry said we could open up to questions. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to try and answer. Well, I like when there's no questions. That means you're saving them all for Rocky. All right, well, thank you very much for having us here.
Okay, Rocky, turnabout's fair play, so you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you for having us here this morning. I'm the representative from the 124th District, and just so it's all, a lot of people, we kind of assume that you know where that is. South Miller County is my area, just south of Eldon, Iberia, Tuscumbia, St. Anthony, and then also I have northern Camden County also. So that's what I've been working on and where I've been at a lot. But David mentioned the Eldon thing. I will have to admit this. I am now starting to use, I tweet. I use Facebook because, you know, that's what we do now. David thinks I use it too much. He says I don't really, every time I eat something, I don't need to tweet a meal or anything like that. But I did tweet when the Lakers and the Mustangs made the advanced in the football playoffs. I did tweet, good luck, Mustangs and Lakers. Now, I wish I would have left it at that, but I put, you know, the Lakers, that wasn't so bad, but tweeting the Mustangs part hurt a little, you know, because I am an Osage Indian, and there's some Osage Indians in here, but I do have a lot of Mustangs, I have a lot of Rangers, I have a lot of Lions, I have a lot of Lakers, and so we work for them all, and David even has, and I keep telling him, he has 5 Indians in his district. He doesn't care, though. He says he doesn't. So we're working for everybody. We're trying to get things, you know, squared around, and I'm really enjoying it. I am. People ask, how are you doing? I said, you know, I'm enjoying it. But there are things that you've got to understand when you go in, and got to understand from our perspective. Be it a small business owner, which a lot of you are, or even a moderately small business, you have an idea for your business, and you go out and you kind of make it happen. You know, even in a larger business, you can sit there and say, you know, I want to change this around a little bit, and I want to make it happen. Well, when you're in government, you've got 163 representatives and 34 senators, I think is what we've got. You've got 200 people with their own ideas, and they're working against a certain set of laws and stuff, and certain set of methods that you have to go through to get there. And so instead of just boom, making it happen, you have to have patience. And you have to deal with a lot of frustration. Because you'll sit there and you'll say, you know, I've got a great idea, this needs to happen today. Well, nothing ever happens today. Nothing happens the next day. Usually nothing happens a month from now. It's a very slow and long process. But I had a good friend that's in the house right now tell me that you want it that way. Anything that happens fast in government is usually a bad thing. It's not good. So the long, slow process of getting a bill finally made into law is tough and takes a long time. And David and I are just now kind of getting a first taste of that and seeing how that process goes. And it can be frustrating because we have constituents come to us and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. And man, I wish I had that magic wand where we could make it happen. But we start working towards that, and David's doing a great job on the K2. The city of Eldon came to us and said, boy, we really need this, and David took that and really led, and we really were blessed in the fact, just by happenstance, the guy that puts the original K2 law is now a representative in the freshman class with us. So that was a fantastic thing that happened for Eldon, and just a thing that's going to be really good for us in the state as a whole. Now, what I do, I'm on the Utilities Committee, which I think is why Amron sat at my table, or maybe I was sat there. But I deal a lot with the utilities and telecommunications, and water, sewer, gas. So it's right, it's my background, so it fit right in where I enjoy being. I also am on the Tourism and Natural Resource Committee, which, you know, fantastic committee for a guy from this area to be on, and David and I are working together on that committee. I was in part of the budget process. My part's done now, basically, until it gets to the floor. I was on appropriations, which basically takes a real close look at transportation, revenue, and economic development. And so we looked at those budgets, we made some changes from what the governor suggested it should be, and we sent that on to the full budget committee, which they're going to do a lot of work this week to try to get that figured out. In addition, I'm on general laws, which I honestly had no idea what general laws. It's sort of a mixed bag, but we really should rename it the gun committee this year, because we are getting tons of gun laws. I mean, that's what we're dealing with, Second Amendment. And so far, it's been very interesting. Being an NRA member, a gun collector, a hunter, concealed carry guy, you know, I was made for that committee, and so and especially for a Missourian on that committee that could, you know, really understands the issues and understands how important the Second Amendment is. And so we get to hear a lot of that, and it's enjoyable. Along those lines, I don't know if anybody knows about House Bill 545. I got about 300 emails on that. That was where somebody filed that they wanted to ban assault weapons in Missouri. Well, you can do that. You can file a bill. Most of the time it doesn't go anywhere. And this one is going to make a liar out of me, because I wrote back to 200 people and said, this bill will never see the light of day. It's never going to, nothing's going to happen. Don't worry about it. Well, this guy, Democrat from St. Louis who filed the bill, started taking a lot of heat, and he wanted to withdraw. Well, the leadership thought, well, let's not let him do that. So they assigned it to my committee that I'm on. So we will probably hear that bill. That bill probably will get to the House floor and probably get voted on. It's going to go down in flames. It's not going to go anywhere, but we'll get to see how they truly feel about about the Second Amendment, and we'll get to have them on record, which we've usually let them have a pass. Let them have a pass when they file, I don't even know, idiotic bill. That's what I'm going to call it, an idiotic bill. And so, but no, we are going to make them vote on it. And so, you know, easiest vote I'm going to take all year, I think, for me. But it's going to be interesting to see how many run to the doors, because you can just run out of the house and not take a vote. And we'll see if we can lock the doors or something, make them take a vote. Anyway, that's some of the stuff I'm doing. Bills that I've presented already are, for the most part, are correcting bills, taking care of things overlooked, unintended consequences, things like that. Actually constituent-based. I've had several constituents come up and already testify in hearings for me. One that's gotten a lot of press is the beach closure law, and I do have a little bit of news on that. It's gotten out of committee. We had some great folks, some from Central Bank and some from the Chamber of Commerce was down at the lake, come up and testify on that bill. So they've gone out of committee. They haven't been voted out of committee yet, but lo and behold, the governor's office came a-calling, and they want to change that via policy. They want to make it so that this year, so we don't have to go through another season of beach closures and the police tape and all that stuff that, you know, it hurts the lake, but it also hurts everybody, the entire district, the entire area. So right now we're in the negotiation phase to see if we can't do something policy-wise to clean that up, get that in place before the beginning of the season, and get us taken care of so that we don't have those, what I believe, unnecessary beach closures. Again, thanks. It's enjoyable, you know, being up in the Capitol. Come and see us. Dave and I are right next door to each other. The walls are thin, so if you're talking to him, I can hear you, so be careful. But we do enjoy serving you, and thank you again.
Well, Blaine, there may be some hope for us, because the next two speakers have asked to speak jointly together. We have Sarah Graff representing Senator Blunt's office, and Allison Scare representing Senator McCaskill's office, and they are also friends, so we're going to get 2 for 1.
morning. I'm Allison Scarum with Senator Claire McCaskill's office. I don't want to take up too much of your time, just let you know that I work for the senator here in the mid-Missouri region and Lake area, and I'm out of the Columbia office. And it's good to be with you all here again. I think this is the third or fourth year we've done this, so good to see everybody again. I just want to call attention to a bill that the senator introduced 2 weeks ago, March 1st, on reducing congressional pay during sequestration, which will, we're asking our federal agencies, you know, they have to cut back their budgets and they will likely furlough their federal workers. So the senator is looking to ask her colleagues to take a pay cut until the balanced compromise can be reached. So I did want to let you all know about that bill, and anything else with what's going on in the Senate right now. We just had a...
Well, I can jump in here. I first wanted to tell you, thanks for inviting us, and as I think the last government speaker, I'll promise to make it quick, but I'll tell you a little bit about Senator Blunt's committee assignments. He is on the Appropriations Committee, and he's actually the ranking member, or the highest Republican, on the subcommittee for agriculture, which is, of course, is very important to our state and our university. He is also on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. And then also this Congress in January, he switched from the Intelligence Committee over to Armed Services. He joined Senator McCaskill on that committee, so it's very significant that both of your senators are on the Armed Services Committee. So that was an exciting change for him. And then just on the short term, I can talk a little bit about the sequester like Allison did. The senator this week will be introducing a bill to give a little more flexibility and exemptions to essential employees like meat inspectors, which of course has a trickle-down effect with other employees and other jobs in the area. So he will be doing that very shortly. And then also this week he will be an original co-sponsor of the Israel resolution, which strongly supports sanctions against Iran. So that's on the foreign policy front, but that will also be probably today. And then in the short term, or this Congress, I wanted to let you know that the senator is again co-sponsoring the Marketplace Fairness Act, which, as some of you may know, is also known as the Internet Sales Tax Bill. It's not a new tax, it's really a compliance issue. We've been getting a lot of support from our small rural communities that are at a competitive disadvantage with the big box stores and online retailers. So this is an attempt to kind of level the playing field, and he will be continuing to support that. It's a very bipartisan issue. In last Congress, it gained a lot of traction, so I suspect it will continue to gain momentum in the Senate. And then lastly, the Congress extended the Farm Bill through the end of this year. So that is something, of course, to particular interest of this area, but they will probably be addressing that later this year, since it seems to be towards the last minute that they do.
Coming through in the fiscal cliff in December.
Right. So with that, we can take any questions, but thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for allowing us the chance to talk to you and prove that we are bipartisan.
How about giving all of our speakers a nice round of applause? If you haven't received enough politics, why we would announce and invite any that want to attend Democracy Day. It will be held at the Eldon Upper Elementary School, and I believe it starts at 9 a.m. starting out in the gymnasium. On behalf of the Eldon Area Chamber, we'd like to thank each of you for starting your day and your week